Call of Duty Modern Warfare has been out for a couple of weeks now, and that's given me plenty of time to play the game and look at it as a whole and really think about what's good, possibly what things can change and be improved on, and also the insane leaks that we've supposedly got over the past few days. So let's start with the good. I know a lot of you guys watched my walkthrough of the campaign. Thank you so much, I really appreciate that. But I thought in general the campaign was fantastic. It's not going to be to everyone's taste, mind you, because it does get pretty dark and brutal, not to mention it touches on some sensitive topics that some people may find uncomfortable. If you can accept the story for what it is though, I think you can truly appreciate how good and gritty and real it is. There are some brilliant moments, some callbacks to the old Modern Warfare games, and some amazing set pieces. The night vision goggle levels in particular were very intense, more akin to a horror game than a first-person shooter. Then we've got the overall performance of the game. It's definitely had a big graphics improvement. The fidelity of the character models and textures, for example, huge improvement there. The lighting especially is very good. And for me personally, the game runs very well on my hardware. The audio in general sounds so much better than your typical COD game too. Everything has a bit more ambience and realism to it. In terms of multiplayer, well, I think the netcode has let me down a little bit. It feels a bit weird at times. I think most players are just enjoying the game fine and having a great time. But I've definitely experienced a couple of netcode issues from time to time that do make you wonder what just happened. I know analysis of the beta was that the overall netcode performance wasn't very good compared to other AAA games, and I'm not sure if they've improved it on launch. But I hope that the developers are really looking at this and improving the netcode. Another plus for the game though, I think we have to really respect the developers for some of the features that they've got into the game. It's jam-packed. On day one, I could load up a private match, tweak all of the settings, including adding bots, inviting my friends, and just go at it. Any map that I wanted to. Coming from Battlefield, that's an incredible feeling to be able to just do that so easily. And it just works. COD has always had that sort of functionality, but it's worth noting how good it is still. There's a co-op mode too, but in my limited time with it, I don't think it's all that great. I'm sure that it will keep some players entertained, but it's really not for me. When it comes to multiplayer, Ground War is the mode that I'm definitely most invested in, and it does deliver some quite different gameplay that Call of Duty has never had before, and it's a lot different to the smaller game modes. It's great for flanking, for sandbox style gameplay. I really like it. It could do with some smoother movement though, and the spawns around the map I think are quite poor. When it comes to Ground War, the biggest disappointment for me is that at the moment there's only 2 maps, which I don't think is enough to set the world on fire, but even still, it's definitely a strong addition to the game. Another shining star for me though is Gunfight. It's such a simple concept, but it's extremely addictive and the maps work really well. It's actually quite surprising how fun and intense it can be. But going back to Ground War for a second, one thing that I don't really like about that game mode is this DEFCON system that kicks in. If one team captures all of the points, you will get a large DEFCON warning at the top of your screen with a timer. If the losing team doesn't capture a point before the timer runs down, well, that team will lose the match instantly. It's almost like a team nuke. I really don't like this system, but I understand why they've done it. It's essentially there to avoid teams steamrolling other teams. If that happens, the idea is that the system will just end the game and you can move into the next lobby, the next game. Fingers crossed that it will be a bit better balanced. That's all well and good, but the reality is that sometimes teams can in fact come back from a situation like that, and coming from a Battlefield background, I can't imagine having a system like that in place there. Of course, they're vastly different games, and you could argue that a team needs to ensure that sort of domination doesn't happen in the first place. One other thing that I've got a big issue with in general is battle chatter. In case you don't know what this is, it's all of the audio that your own character, teammates and even enemies shout when certain things happen. And this is triggered automatically, you've got no control over it. On your screen, you might spot an enemy running across the road for a split second, and your character will shout out, "Enemy spotted," or you could be reloading and they shout "reloading." Whatever it is, there are so many of them after all. The point is that enemies can actually hear those callouts when your character does them, providing that they're close enough. And what's worse, there is absolutely nothing that you can do about that because they're all automatic. The problem with this is that sometimes you could be creeping up on someone and your guy shouts out, "Enemy spotted." They hear that, they turn around and they kill you. You've not done anything wrong, but you've been punished for it. It doesn't really make sense. It doesn't feel fair. playing devil's advocate for a second, I imagine the reason that they are there is just to add a bit more immersion and make the audio feel a bit fuller as you're moving around the maps, and that's fine. The problem with the current system though is that as a player, you should never be penalized for something outside of your control. Interestingly though, the latest patch Infinity Ward added removed battle chatter from tactical one life modes only. So that's presumably modes like search and destroy and cyber attack. That's all well and good, but personally, I don't think they have a place in any of the game modes. If you leave them in, just make sure that the enemies can't hear them. Keep them for just teammates and that will be fine. Bit of an intermission here for a second. One of the perks of being a content creator is that gaming companies like to send you stuff, and I just had to show you this because I thought it was super cool. Nvidia teamed up with Modern Warfare and they sent me this box. Huge thing. I opened it up and there's actually a real pair of night vision goggles inside, which is crazy. These work in the dark. They've got a long range mode, a short range mode, all that good stuff. There's some cool RTX postcards in there, and also a 2080 Ti, which I've got no complaints about. Bit of a surprise, it just turned up. I wasn't expecting it, so a big thanks to those guys. And this isn't a sponsored thing, but I suppose the whole point of this is that they're doing a promotion at the moment where if you buy a 20 series graphics card, you can get Modern Warfare for free. So it makes sense that they've done this collaboration in that respect. But yeah, just a cool thing I wanted to show you guys. Now then, let's move on and talk about maps, because this is a pretty hot topic right now. One of the important things that you need to know is that for a long time, Call of Duty utilized a basic 3-lane system for most of its maps. It's quite self-explanatory. Even though there were 3 basic lanes, of course all of the maps had a unique design to them still. This year, for the most part though, that system has changed and the maps are a lot more varied and based on real life locations and scale. That in itself is absolutely not a problem, but I would say that most people feel that the maps aren't all that well designed in the way that they flow. Some game modes work better than others, but for the most part there are some maps where one team can easily lock another into their spawn, or even overlook enemy spawns at the same time. Some of the designs could have been a bit better. Maps are always going to be personal preference of course, but lots of times it feels like there's just too many angles to cover as well, with the amount of windows and doorways and alleyways that people can be leaning and hiding in. Maps are always going to be a personal preference, but there's been enough comments on social media and Reddit to suggest that there might be something to this. Not to mention I do tend to agree about some of the maps not being great. The 725 shotgun as well. Come on. This thing needs to be nerfed ASAP. You can one-shot enemies with it from way too far distances. Right now, if you don't have this gun equipped, you're at a disadvantage in my opinion. That's a terrible situation for the game to be in. Couple it with an M4 and you've easily got the best setup in the game. Claymores too, so frustrating. I feel like they need a bit more readability and perhaps a longer time to set up. I dislike how quickly you can slam this into the ground. I've had gunfights with people where I kill them, but the second before they receive the damage, they hit their lethal key, the claymore is instantly placed on the ground and then it blows you up. And it leads to some really frustrating gameplay at times. I've seen suggestions that say maybe claymores could be a field upgrade choice rather than a lethal option, but we'll see what they do. The TTK in general too. I want it to be a bit longer so gunfights are more drawn out. And I know that this is a really hot topic, but I find that because of how quick the time to kill is, the meta of the game has become camp, hold angles, and you will succeed. If you're shot in the back 99% of the time, you don't have enough time to react and you're dead. Combined with how loud the footstep sounds are, it's really difficult to play aggressive and flank most of the time. And this leads to what I find to be an inherently over-defensive playstyle that you're forced to adapt to for good results. And that isn't as engaging as it could be. I know it's subjective, but I feel like the flow of the game and opportunity for great plays would be much better if everything was a bit more mobile than it currently is. As a whole though, I think the game is really fun. There's a great amount of customization with the weapons and characters, although I do dislike the fact that you have to do missions one by one and individually select them to track which one that you're doing at once. It feels like I'm back playing Battlefield 5. I kind of wish that they all just tracked by themselves over time, but it is what it is. Now, earlier on I mentioned leaks, and well, there's been a big one over the last few days with some interesting things regarding future content for the game. I feel that before we dive into this, it would be a good time to have the usual discourse of leaks are not confirmed by any stretch of the imagination. They could be made up, they could be rumours, fake, could be completely false. However, this particular piece of information has come from a well-known source who is usually correct on these things. Previously, a lot of what this guy has leaked has been accurate, although not everything. Pinch of salt. The biggest takeaway from the latest leak, though, is the potential of 30 new maps coming to the game over an undefined period. And this includes new ground war maps and a ton of classic Call of Duty maps from previous games. The new ground war maps apparently vary in size, with one being called Farm and another called Train Station. And there are some old classic maps in there too, such as Rust from Modern Warfare 2, a remastered Shipment, Terminal, and even Crash. As well as that, we will also be getting newly created maps too. Ones that Infinity Ward have made from the ground up for Modern Warfare. Another huge potential leak is a Battle Royale mode, and this has been rumoured for quite some time, and this guy, The Gaming Revolution, even showed off a hand-drawn version of the map. But interestingly, the Spec Ops map is remarkably like his drawing. It would seem that a Battle Royale maybe is in the works, and it could be using the Spec Ops map as its base. Again, take that all with a pinch of salt. All of this supposed leak could be fake, but could be real at the same time. What's interesting here is Infinity Ward's use of the Spec Ops map though. Right now you can't access the entire Spec Ops map at once, but you can go where the 4 missions would allow you to. And there are plenty of other areas that resemble old maps there too. Even Tovorsk District, which is a multiplayer map, and that's present on the Spec Ops map. This would suggest that the map itself is a large selection of maps that Infinity Ward are either already using or can pick from whatever they want to make multiplayer maps. Supposedly areas such as Vacant and Broadcast from previous COD games are also present on that Spec Ops map. Of course, this is all well and good, but like I said, we don't know how accurate it is, and if it is when these maps will come, we don't know. You would imagine that Infinity Ward would probably drip feed this content over the next year. Either way, if true, it does sound like there's a ton of new content coming to the game, and a Battle Royale mode, well, that could be something special indeed. And that's all for today, folks. Do let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this one. How are you enjoying Modern Warfare so far? I know a lot of you guys have tuned into my streams as well, so I really appreciate that. Plenty more of those to come along the way. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you didn't, a dislike. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.